My name is Evelyn, I'm 75 years old, and I've lived long enough to see things that could make your heart race like a train running down the tracks. But there's one story I must tell you today, and believe me, it's a story that will make you hold your chest and whisper, "Did that really happen?" Now let me start at the highest peak because I don't want to drag my feet before giving you the shock. My friend, her name is Martha, caught her husband, James, in their family car. And no, he wasn't sleeping. He wasn't texting. He wasn't even lost in thought. She found him receiving pleasure from another woman, right there in the driver's seat, on the very night they were supposed to be heading together to a big family party. Yes, you heard me right. A married man, a family event, and a wife standing outside the car window, staring into the shameful truth. The sight froze her heart. Her hand trembled on the car door handle. For a second, she thought maybe her eyes were playing tricks. But no, it was real. And the worst part, that woman in the car wasn't even a stranger. It was someone Martha had seen before. But let me not rush too far. I'll leave you hanging right there for a moment. Because I know you're already asking yourself, what did Martha do next? Did she scream? Did she slap James across the face? Did she walk away? We'll get there. But first, let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand who Martha is, who James is, and why this night turned into the storm of her life. Before we enter the darkness of betrayal, let us start from the light, the kindness, the everyday love that makes people trust in others. Only then will you feel the weight of what happened when trust was broken. So tell me, my dear ones, where are you watching this story from? Are you sitting in your living room with your legs tucked under a blanket? Are you in your car listening while you wait for someone? Or maybe you're far away in another country, with your phone in your hand, leaning against a pillow. Wherever you are, open your heart wide because this story is more than scandal. It is a lesson about kindness, patience, and the storms we never see coming. Now let me introduce you to Martha. Martha is 72 years old, but if you saw her walking down the street, you might guess she's only 60. She has silver hair that she wears proudly in curls, a gentle smile that warms any room, and the type of voice that makes children run to her for comfort. She grew up in a small town in Georgia, raised with the belief that family was the backbone of life. Her mother taught her, "Martha, kindness is never wasted. What you give will always return to you, even if it takes years." Martha carried that lesson in her heart all her life. She was the kind of woman who would bake extra bread so she could share it with her neighbors. If you fell sick, she'd bring you soup and sit by your bed until you smiled again. And when she met James, she believed she had found a man who shared those same values. James, her husband, was the opposite of loud. He was quiet, calm, always with a thoughtful look. He worked in finance most of his life, always wearing crisp shirts, and carrying himself like a man who had everything under control. People liked him because he seemed steady. If you saw James, you would never imagine him breaking Martha's heart. That's what makes this story even harder. They married young, had 3 children, and lived a life full of family dinners, Christmas gatherings, and Sunday church services. 4 years, Martha never doubted her husband's loyalty. She believed she was safe. She believed love was enough. But life has its turns. The night everything broke started so simply. Martha had been looking forward to the family party for weeks. It wasn't just any party. It was a reunion where cousins were coming in from different states. The air smelled like roasted chicken and apple pie when she packed her dishes to take along. She wore a navy blue dress with pearls at her neck, the kind she saved for special occasions. She had even told James, "Let's try to be on time this year. I don't want to walk in late again." He smiled and said, "Of course, honey." That evening the sky was clear, and the moonlight spread across the quiet streets. Families in the neighborhood were laughing, music floated from houses, and everything felt calm. But hidden under that calmness was a storm waiting to explode. On their way to the party, James told Martha, "Let me just pull over by the store. I need to make a quick stop." Martha, thinking nothing of it, said, "All right, I'll wait in the house." She stepped inside for a moment, fixing her purse and double-checking the casserole she was bringing. When she came back out, James wasn't parked where she expected. Her heart thumped. Something felt off. She walked slowly down the driveway and saw their car parked under a tree, just a short distance away, as if James didn't want anyone to see. At first, she thought maybe he was just making a phone call. But as she drew closer, she noticed movement inside the car. Shadows shifting. A head bent low in the driver's seat. Her legs nearly gave way. She blinked, hoping she was wrong. But when she reached the car, her heart shattered into pieces. There was James, her husband of nearly 50 years. His head tilted back, his face twisted in guilty pleasure. And beside him, another woman, her head moving up and down. Martha froze like a statue. For a second she couldn't breathe. She held onto the car door handle, her knuckles white. Inside her, kindness clashed with rage, love fought with betrayal. And right in that moment, before she could even speak, the woman in the car lifted her face, and Martha's world tilted upside down. Because she knew her. Now let me pause here. Because the moment you find out who that woman was, everything will change. But before I tell you that, I must show you how Martha got to this night, the long journey of love, patience, and quiet sacrifices that brought her here. You must understand the highs and the lows before the storm makes sense. Because without knowing the light, you cannot truly feel the dark. Martha had spent most of her life serving others. She was the glue of her family. When her children were young, she worked part-time as a school librarian, spending her evenings cooking and helping with homework. She was the kind of mother who stayed up late sewing costumes for school plays, even if it meant losing sleep. When her daughter fell into depression during college, Martha sat by her side for months, whispering, "You are stronger than you think." Her kindness wasn't just for her children. Neighbors leaned on her too. When a young mother down the street had her car break down, Martha gave her rides for 2 weeks straight. She never once complained. "It's no trouble," she'd say with that soft smile. "We are here to help one another." That's the type of woman Martha was. The type who carried others' burdens even when hers were heavy. And maybe that's why what she saw in that car cut so deeply. Because Martha had given her whole life to loving, and in return, she was handed betrayal on the night meant for family celebration. But let me not jump ahead too quickly. The night was still young. The casserole dish was still warm in her hands. The pearls still rested on her neck. The family still waited at the party, laughing, not knowing what storm was unfolding just a few streets away. Martha's fingers gripped the car door tighter. Her lips parted, but no words came. She could only stare as James's eyes flew open and met hers. And in that frozen second, the other woman lifted her face fully into the light. It wasn't just anyone. It was. And that's where I must leave you at the end of this first chapter. Because what Martha saw next will shake you just as it shook her. It wasn't just anyone. The woman in that car, her head still too close to James for Martha's comfort, was none other than Caroline, Martha's best friend's daughter. Yes, you heard me right. Not a stranger from the streets, not some nameless face, but the young woman Martha had once held in her arms as a baby. The same Caroline who used to come to Martha's kitchen after school, asking for cookies and warm milk. The same Caroline Martha defended when people gossiped about her wild teenage years. That girl, now 35, was the one in the car, lips stained with shame, looking Martha straight in the eyes. Martha's body trembled from head to toe. "Caroline!" Her voice cracked like broken glass. Caroline's eyes widened, her face flushing red. She tried to pull away, scrambling like a guilty child caught with her hand in the cookie jar. James sat frozen, his face drained of all color. For a second no one moved, the night air thick with silence. Then Martha's chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. She wanted to scream, wanted to tear the car door open, wanted to ask 1,000 questions all at once. But the only sound that left her lips was a whisper. "How could you?" James finally spoke, his voice rough. "Martha, it's not what it looks like." But before he could finish, Martha let go of the door handle, turned on her heel, and walked away, her legs shaky but her back held tall. She knew if she stood there another second, she might explode in a way she could never take back. And Martha was not a woman who wanted to lose herself. She walked back into the house, her pearls cold against her skin, her casserole dish sitting heavy on the counter like a stone. She pulled out a chair, sat down, and pressed her hands together. Her heart raced, but her mind whispered the lessons her mother had once told her. Kindness is strength. Patience is wisdom. Even in the storm, keep your ground. And so, she didn't scream. She didn't throw dishes. She didn't collapse. She sat still, waiting for her heart to slow down, for her thoughts to settle. After a few minutes, she rose, went into her bedroom, and looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection stared back. A woman in her 70s, pearls around her neck, a blue dress hugging her frame, and eyes full of pain. She whispered to her reflection, "You are stronger than this. You've faced worse." And indeed, Martha had faced storms before. Years ago, when her eldest son lost his job and nearly lost his marriage, Martha was the one who held him together. She would drive across town to bring him dinner. She would babysit his children. She would speak words of hope into his weary heart. She knew what it meant to fight for family. But this betrayal was a different kind of fight. She thought of Caroline, that sweet little girl who once drew her crayon pictures of rainbows and handed them proudly to Auntie Martha. She thought of all the time she had hugged her, told her she could be anything she wanted, encouraged her when her grades were low, defended her when people called her troubled. And now, here she was, stealing the man Martha had trusted with her life. The pain cut deep, not only because of James but because of Caroline. It was betrayal doubled, from two people she never thought would hurt her. Her thoughts were interrupted when her phone rang. It was her daughter, Jessica. "Mama," Jessica's cheerful voice came through. "Are you on your way yet? Everybody's waiting. Cousin Henry just got here with his family." Martha's throat tightened. She wanted to tell her daughter everything, to spill the storm raging in her chest. But she couldn't, not yet. Not when the whole family was gathered in joy. She swallowed and forced her voice steady. "Yes, sweetheart. I'll be there soon." After the call ended, Martha sat still again. Her heart told her one thing. She had to go to that party. She couldn't let betrayal steal her dignity. She had to show up, pearls and all, smiling, standing strong. If she broke down, she wanted it to be in her own home, not in front of the family. And so, she fixed her hair, lifted the casserole and walked out the door. James wasn't in the driveway anymore. The car was gone. She didn't ask where he went. She didn't want to know. She simply called a taxi, rode in silence, and arrived at the family party like nothing had happened. The house was filled with laughter, music, and the smell of barbecue. Children ran in the yard, cousins hugged each other, and Martha stepped into the warmth of it all, carrying her dish as though her heart wasn't shattered inside. People greeted her with love, telling her how beautiful she looked, how glad they were to see her. And for a little while, Martha let herself breathe. She told stories, she hugged relatives, she smiled at babies. She let the joy around her cover the crack in her soul. Because sometimes that's what life requires. Pretending to be strong until strength finds its way back into your bones. But just when she thought she could make it through the night without her secret spilling, the air shifted. A hush fell over the yard as a familiar car pulled up in the driveway. It was James's car. And he wasn't alone. The door opened, and Caroline stepped out with him. Both of them walked toward the house as though nothing had happened. As though the world hadn't just turned upside down. Martha's heart dropped to the floor. The family party grew silent, every eye turning toward the pair. And before Martha could stop it, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. And that, my dear ones, is where we must end this chapter. Because what happened when Caroline and James walked into that family party? Oh, it was a storm no one expected. The air outside that family house turned heavy, like thunder before a storm. Laughter died, conversations stopped. Even the music from the speakers seemed to lower itself as James and Caroline walked toward the porch. Martha stood frozen by the buffet table, her casserole untouched. Her heart thumping so loud she thought everyone could hear it. Her hands shook against the serving spoon she held. Caroline, her best friend's daughter, stepped into the warm glow of the porch lights with James by her side. Her hair was brushed neatly, her smile shy, her eyes darting nervously around the room. James, however, held himself like a man who refused to admit shame. His back was straight, his chin high, though his eyes avoided Martha's. Whispers rippled like a wave. "Is that Caroline?" someone muttered. "With Uncle James?" another voice asked, low but sharp. The children paused in their games, watching the adults' reactions. Martha's daughter Jessica came running over, her smile bright with innocence. "Daddy, you made it." She flung her arms around James without knowing the storm he carried with him. Jessica then turned to Caroline. "Oh, Caroline, I didn't know you were coming." "Mama, did you know Caroline was coming?" All eyes turned toward Martha. The spoon slipped from her fingers, clattering against the dish. Her face burned, her body stiff. For a heartbeat, she wanted to tell the truth, to let every word of betrayal pour out into that room. But something inside her, pride, dignity, self-control, kept her lips sealed. She forced a smile, though it trembled. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "I knew." A lie, spoken not to protect James, but to protect herself. Because Martha would not allow her pain to become the family's entertainment. The night continued, though the air was thick with tension. Martha busied herself in the kitchen, avoiding James's eyes. She stirred drinks, sliced pies, kept herself moving so she wouldn't collapse. Caroline tried to mingle, but whispers followed her everywhere she went. Aunts eyed her curiously. Cousins whispered behind their cups. Children pointed when they thought no one was looking. James stuck close to her side, as though daring anyone to question them. Inside, Martha was breaking. But on the outside she held her head high. At one point her grandson, little Noah, tugged on her dress. "Grandma," he whispered, "why are you sad?" Martha knelt down, her eyes softening. She couldn't tell a child the storm raging inside her. So she kissed his forehead and said gently, "Grandma's not sad, sweetheart. Grandma's just a little tired. But remember this, no matter what happens, we must always be kind." The boy nodded, wrapping his small arms around her neck. That hug reminded her of her strength, reminded her of the kindness she'd always lived by. For a brief moment, peace returned. She watched her grandchildren play, she listened to the laughter of cousins, and she let herself breathe. But storms don't stay quiet for long. As the evening wore on, Jessica noticed something strange. She leaned close to Martha and whispered, "Mama, why does Caroline keep following Daddy around like that? And why is everybody whispering when they look at them?" Martha's heart pounded. She knew she couldn't keep the truth hidden forever. Sooner or later, the storm would break open for all to see. And it broke sooner. Because just as Jessica finished her question, the back door of the house opened, and in walked none other than Caroline's mother, Martha's best friend Linda. Linda's eyes lit up as she saw her daughter. "Caroline, there you are." But her smile faded when she noticed Caroline standing so close to James. Her gaze flicked between the two of them, suspicion rising like smoke. And then, without warning, someone in the crowd whispered too loudly, "That's the one James was in the car with earlier." The room fell silent again. Linda's face twisted, her voice sharp as a knife. "What did you just say?" Every head turned toward Martha. Every eye demanded an answer. And Martha, standing in the center of it all, realized she could no longer protect the secret. Her lips parted. Her chest heaved. And just as she was about to speak, Caroline grabbed James's arm and shouted, "Yes, it's true. I love him." Gasps filled the room. Plates clattered, cups spilled, children were ushered away. Linda's hand flew to her chest. Caroline with him. With him. Her eyes darted toward Martha, burning with betrayal. "Did you know about this?" Martha stood frozen. The whole family, every cousin, every aunt, every child, waited for her answer. Her breath caught in her throat. And that is where this chapter must end. Because the words Martha chose to speak next, Those words would decide if the family fell apart, or if the storm could somehow be survived. Every eye in that crowded house fixed on Martha. The air was so tight you could almost hear the beating of her heart. Linda, her best friend of 50 years, stood trembling, her face pale with shock. Caroline clung to James's arm, her chin lifted in defiance, though her eyes flickered with fear. Martha's throat tightened. Words pressed against her lips. But which ones? Should she scream? Should she confess? Should she expose the ugly truth to protect herself, or swallow her pain to protect the family? Finally her voice came out, low but steady. "Yes," she whispered. "I know." Gasps broke through the room like shattered glass. Linda staggered back, her hand gripping the table for support. "You knew. And you didn't tell me?" Her voice cracked, part rage, part heartbreak. Tears burned Martha's eyes, but she stood tall. "I only found out tonight," she said firmly. "Right before this party. And I came here because I didn't want to ruin this gathering for everyone. I wanted the children to have their joy before the storm came." Her words hung heavy in the room. Some nodded slowly, understanding her sacrifice. Others whispered among themselves, judging her silence. James finally spoke, his tone defensive. "This is ridiculous. Martha, you're making this bigger than it is." Linda spun on him, her eyes blazing. "Bigger than it is. You're a married man, with children and grandchildren. And you went after my daughter." The tension exploded. Family members began arguing, voices rising. Some shouted at James, others at Caroline. A few tried to calm the storm, urging everyone to take a breath. The children, frightened, were hurried into another room. In the chaos, Martha stood still, her hands clasped, her chest heaving. This was not the life she imagined when she married James 50 years ago. Not the family she dreamed of holding together. For a brief moment, she closed her eyes and remembered her wedding day. James's gentle smile, the vows they spoke under the summer sun, the promise of forever. How did forever turn into this? She opened her eyes to find Linda staring at her. Her friend's face was etched with pain. "Martha, how could you not tell me right away?" Tears spilled down Martha's cheeks. "Because I loved you too much to hand you that pain in the middle of a party. I thought maybe I could carry it for just a little while longer." Linda's face softened, her anger breaking into sorrow. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Martha, and the two women held each other, crying quietly in the middle of the storm. For a moment peace returned. Two old friends, bound by love and years of shared memories, clinging to each other in the face of betrayal. But peace never lasts long in a storm. Because just as Martha began to steady herself, a voice cut through the air like thunder. It was Jessica, Martha's daughter. Her eyes were wide, her voice shaking as she turned to her father. "Daddy, is it true? Did you really do this?" The room went silent again, every head swiveling toward James. James's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, but instead of answering his daughter, he snapped at the room. "This is none of your business. What happens between me and Martha is private." Jessica's face crumpled. "Private? You embarrassed Mama in front of everyone. You betrayed her, and you think it's private?" James's hand slammed down on the table. "Enough!" The sound echoed through the house, startling everyone. Jessica stepped back, tears spilling down her cheeks. And then, before anyone could react further, Caroline spoke again. Her voice trembling but loud enough for all to hear. "I don't care what any of you think. I love him. And if he leaves Martha, he'll be with me." A scream broke the air. Not from Martha, not from Linda, but from Jessica. "No!" Jessica cried, pointing at Caroline. "You will not destroy this family." The room erupted again, voices clashing, emotions boiling. Plates crashed, chairs scraped, people shouting over one another. And right in the middle of the chaos, James grabbed Caroline's hand and said words that silenced everyone in the room. "Then maybe it's time I do leave." The room froze, stunned into silence. And that, my dear ones, is where this chapter must end. Because what James meant by those words, and whether he truly planned to walk away, will shake the very foundation of Martha's family. Then maybe it's time I do leave. James's words dropped into the room like a stone into still water, sending ripples through every heart present. People gasped. Linda clutched her chest. Martha stood frozen, her face drained of all color. Her daughter Jessica shook her head in disbelief. "Daddy, how can you even say that?" Her voice cracked, raw with hurt. "After everything Mama has given you. After 50 years. James didn't answer. He just stood there, his hand still gripping Caroline's, his jaw set as though daring anyone to challenge him. The silence stretched until finally Martha spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, but each word cut like glass. "If that's the choice you want to make, James, then make it. But know this, you don't just leave me. You leave the family you built. You leave your children. You leave your grandchildren. And you may never get them back." Her words trembled with power. Even in betrayal, Martha carried herself with dignity. For a moment James faltered. His eyes flicked toward his grandchildren in the next room, toward the family portraits on the wall, toward the woman he had built a lifetime with. But Caroline tightened her grip on his hand, her face pleading, her eyes whispering promises of something new, something different. Linda's voice cracked through the tension. "Caroline, let go of him. You're destroying lives you have no right to touch." Caroline shook her head fiercely. "No, Mama. I love him. You don't understand. He sees me. He listens to me. He doesn't treat me like I'm nothing." Tears spilled down Linda's cheeks. "You're my daughter, and you're choosing this. A married man twice your age. Have you lost your mind?" The room spiraled again into chaos. Some family members yelled at James, others at Caroline. Some begged for calm. Martha stood still, her hands clasped in front of her. Her heart breaking but her posture strong. And then, like a light in the middle of the storm, her grandson Noah came running into the room. He couldn't have been more than 8, his small hands clutching a drawing he'd made in the kids' room. He looked around at the angry faces, at his crying mama, at his trembling grandma. "Stop fighting," he said softly. His little voice somehow carried louder than the shouting. "Please. Families aren't supposed to fight. Families are supposed to love." The room went silent. The innocence of a child pierced through anger thicker than steel. People lowered their heads. Linda sobbed harder. Even James's shoulders slumped. Martha bent down and pulled Noah into her arms, kissing the top of his head. "You're right, baby. Families are supposed to love." The storm quieted for a short while. Conversations turned into hushed murmurs. Some relatives began gathering their coats, whispering about leaving before things grew worse. Others drifted to the kitchen, trying to distract themselves with food and chores. For nearly half an hour, the house stayed in this uneasy peace. Martha busied herself pouring lemonade, offering slices of pie to anyone who would take them. It was her way of showing that even in heartbreak, she would not let kindness slip from her hands. But deep down, she knew peace was only a shadow. The storm wasn't done yet. And she was right. Because as people began settling again, Caroline suddenly stood up in the middle of the room. Her voice trembling but loud enough for all to hear. "If James doesn't leave Martha tonight," she declared, "then I will tell every single person in this family, and outside this family, exactly what he and I have been doing. I won't hide anymore. I won't be a secret." The words hit like thunder. Every eye turned back to James. Every heart waited for his answer. Would he protect his marriage, or give in to Caroline's demand? Martha's breath caught. The family leaned in. And James opened his mouth. And that's where we must end this chapter. Because the choice he made in that moment would not just decide his future, but Martha's, Caroline's, and the entire family's. Caroline's words echoed through the living room like a drumbeat. "If James doesn't leave Martha tonight, then I will tell everyone exactly what we've been doing." Martha's heart clenched. Jessica's eyes widened in horror. Linda gasped, clutching the cross necklace that hung around her neck. The family, cousins, uncles, aunts, all leaned forward waiting, their faces twisted with a mixture of shock and curiosity. James stood there like a man caught between two burning houses, both collapsing, both demanding he choose. His lips parted. His eyes shifted from Caroline's pleading face to Martha's steady one. Finally, his voice came low, rough, like gravel scraping the floor. "Caroline," he said, "stop." The young woman blinked, her chest rising fast. "Stop." "Well, I won't stop. I'm tired of hiding, James. I've given you everything, my heart, my time, and you still go home to her every night. It's not fair. If you love me, prove it. Walk out with me now." Martha's hands trembled against the side of her dress, but she kept her head held high. She refused to beg. She refused to lower herself. The silence stretched, unbearable. Finally, James drew in a deep breath. His words came out flat, cold, final. "Caroline, this was a mistake. I can't leave Martha." A collective gasp swept the room. Caroline staggered back as though struck, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. What did you just say?" James shook his head. "I was stupid. But I can't throw away 50 years of marriage, my children, my grandchildren, for this. I won't." The room buzzed with murmurs. Some family members nodded approvingly. Others frowned, wondering if his words were too little, too late. But Caroline's face twisted into fury. "So that's it. You use me, you whisper promises to me, you make me believe you'd leave her, and now you toss me aside like trash." Tears streamed down her face as she turned toward her mother. "See, Mama. See what he's done to me." Linda's face hardened. She pointed at James, her voice sharp as a whip. "You've not only betrayed your wife, James. You've broken my daughter. You've shamed both families. You've turned a gathering of love into a night of disgrace." James's head dropped. For once he had no defense. Caroline's sobs grew louder. She pushed past the relatives, storming out of the house into the night. Linda followed quickly, calling after her. "Caroline! Wait! Don't go alone." The sound of the front door slamming shook the walls. For a brief moment silence returned. The storm seemed to have blown past, leaving only destruction in its wake. Jessica rushed to her mother's side, tears streaming down her face. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I can't believe he did this to you." Martha stroked her daughter's hair gently. "Hush now, baby. Don't carry my pain as your own. What matters is how we stand after the storm, not how hard the wind blew." Her words carried wisdom, but inside, her chest was breaking. She had held herself together all night, but the weight of it pressed harder than ever. Family members began murmuring about leaving. Some hugged Martha, whispering their support. Others left quickly, eager to escape the tension. The once bright reunion had been shattered. Martha stayed until the last dish was cleared, the last cousin gone. She carried her casserole dish back home in silence, her pearls still around her neck, her heart aching with every step. At home, she set the dish on the counter, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at her hands. 50 years of loyalty, 50 years of sacrifice. And James had thrown it away for a fling. And then she heard the door creak open behind her. James's footsteps shuffled into the kitchen. He didn't sit across from her. He didn't speak. He just stood there, his shadow long across the floor. Finally, his voice came low. "Martha, I'm sorry." She didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on her hands, folded neatly in her lap. "I should never have. I was weak," he continued. "But I can make it right. If you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." Martha's chest tightened. Was this repentance? Or was it fear of losing his comfort, his home, his family's respect? She finally lifted her head, her eyes sharp, her voice calm but unshakable. "James, you don't get to decide that tonight. You broke something. And broken things don't get fixed in one evening. If you truly want to prove yourself, you'll have to show it every day. Not with words. With actions. James nodded slowly, shame etched into his face. I'll do whatever it takes. But just as Martha thought the night was finally settling into silence, her phone rang on the counter. She reached for it, her hands trembling slightly. The caller ID lit up with a name that made her blood run cold. It was Caroline. Martha's breath caught. Why was she calling? What could she possibly want now, after the storm she had caused? She pressed the phone to her ear, her voice cautious. Hello. And on the other end of the line came Caroline's trembling voice. Martha. I think I did something terrible. And that, my dear ones, is where this chapter must end. Because what Caroline confessed next would drag the family into a darkness deeper than betrayal. Martha's hand trembled as she held the phone to her ear. Caroline's voice was shaky, almost swallowed by the sound of wind rushing through wherever she was calling from. Martha. I think I did something terrible. Martha sat up straight, her heart pounding. Caroline. Where are you? What do you mean? There was a pause followed by a sob. I couldn't take it. After he humiliated me in front of everyone, I got in my car. I drove. I wasn't thinking straight. And now? Her words trailed off into a broken whisper. Now what, Caroline? Speak, child. Martha demanded, her grandmotherly instinct breaking through her own pain. Even though Caroline had been her husband's mistress, Martha still heard the cry of a wounded young woman. I hit something. Or someone. I don't know, Caroline wailed. It was dark. I didn't stop. I just kept driving. But Martha, I think I hurt somebody. The blood drained from Martha's face. She clutched the edge of the kitchen table to steady herself. James, who had been hovering near the doorway, stiffened when he heard Caroline's words. His eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. Good Lord, Martha whispered. Where are you now? I pulled over by the old Miller Bridge, Caroline said, her voice breaking. My car is dented. The headlights are cracked. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, Martha. I can't call Mama, she'll kill me. I can't call the police, they'll lock me up. Please, you're the only one who answered. Help me. For a moment the room seemed to spin. Martha was torn in two. On one hand, this was the very girl who had shattered her marriage, humiliated her in front of her family, and nearly destroyed her peace. On the other, Caroline was young, terrified, and possibly involved in something that could ruin her life forever. Or worse, cost someone theirs. James stepped forward, his voice low and urgent. Hang up. Don't get involved, Martha. This is her mess. She made her choices. Let her deal with the police. Martha turned and looked at him, her eyes sharp, her voice firm. James, don't you dare. You were part of creating this storm. You don't get to wash your hands clean now. He opened his mouth to argue, but Martha held up a hand. If someone's hurt out there, we can't just sit here. She lifted the phone back to her ear. Caroline, stay where you are. Don't move. I'll come to you. Caroline let out a sob of relief. Thank you, Martha. Please hurry. I don't know what I'll do if someone finds me here. When Martha hung up, James's face was pale. You're really going? After what she's done to us? After everything? Martha stood, straightening her pearl necklace, her back as straight as it had been on her wedding day. James, sometimes life tests you in ways you least expect. Caroline may have hurt me, but if a person is drowning, you don't ask how they fell in before you pull them out. You just pull. James stared at her, torn between guilt and fear. Finally he muttered, Then I'm coming with you. The drive to Miller Bridge was heavy with silence. The headlights of Martha's old Buick cut through the darkness. Her hands were steady on the wheel, but her thoughts swirled. She thought of her youth, of times when people had shown her kindness even when she didn't deserve it. And she thought of Caroline. Reckless, selfish, yes, but also lost, fragile, and desperately in need of guidance. When they finally reached the bridge, they spotted Caroline's car pulled over to the side. She was leaning against the hood, shaking, her face streaked with tears. Martha parked and hurried toward her. "Child, what happened?" Caroline pointed with trembling hands. "It was right there. I thought I saw a shadow. Person maybe. But when I looked back in the rearview mirror, there was nothing. I don't know if it was real or if I imagined it. But the front of my car, look. The headlight was cracked. The bumper dented. Something dark, mud or maybe blood, streaked across the metal." Martha bent down, her heart racing. James stood back, his arms folded, his face pale. Caroline clutched Martha's arm. "What do I do? If the police find out, I'll go to jail. My life will be over. Please, Martha. Please help me." Martha looked into the dark stretch of road, the night air heavy with silence. Somewhere out there maybe someone had been hit. Maybe someone was lying hurt or worse. She turned slowly toward Caroline, her voice firm. "The truth always finds its way out, Caroline. We can't run from it. We need to go back down that road and see what you hit." Caroline's face went pale. "No. What if it's a body? What if I killed someone?" Martha placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Then we face it. Together." James's voice cut through the night, sharp, urgent. "Martha, don't. If we find a body, it won't just be her life ruined. It'll drag us all down. The scandal will destroy this family." Martha turned and looked him in the eye. "The scandal already happened, James. But a life is worth more than a reputation." And with that, Martha took Caroline's shaking hand, pulled her toward the Buick and said, "Come on. We're driving back. We need to know the truth." But as they turned back down the road, headlights suddenly appeared behind them. Bright, fast, closing in. Caroline gasped. "Oh my God, someone's following us." The car behind them sped closer, its headlights blinding, flooding the inside of Martha's Buick with harsh white light. Martha gripped the steering wheel tighter, her heart pounding. Caroline twisted around in her seat, her voice trembling. "They're following us. Oh God, what if it's the police? What if they saw me?" James leaned forward, his jaw tight. "Or worse, it could be someone who saw the accident. Someone who knows what happened." Martha kept her eyes on the road, her voice calm though her chest was thundering. "Panicking won't help. Sit still, both of you. Let's see what they want." But the car behind them didn't just follow. It swerved closer, riding their bumper, almost pushing them off the road. Caroline let out a scream. "They're trying to run us off." "Why? Why would they do that?" James snapped, his fear spilling out as anger. "Because you hit someone, Caroline. And whoever that was, they want revenge." Martha shot him a sharp look. "Enough, James. You're scaring her more." The other car honked, a loud, angry blast that echoed through the night. Then, just as suddenly, it pulled up alongside them. For a moment, Martha caught a glimpse of the driver through the window. Shadowed face, hands gripping the wheel tight, eyes flashing in the light. Then the car swerved again, cutting in front of them and forcing Martha to slam the brakes. The Buick skidded, tires screeching against the asphalt. Caroline clutched the dashboard, screaming, while James cursed under his breath. The mysterious car stopped dead in the middle of the road, blocking their path. Its doors opened slowly. A tall figure stepped out. The night air was still, except for the sound of crickets and Caroline's sobs. Martha narrowed her eyes, her breath catching. "Dear Lord, it's Linda." Caroline gasped. "Mama!" Linda strode toward the Buick, her face stern, her eyes burning with fire. She looked like a woman on a mission, one hand clenched at her side. Martha lowered the window slightly. "Linda, what on earth are you doing?" Linda's voice was sharp as glass. "Step out, Caroline. Now." Caroline froze, her body trembling. "Mama, I didn't mean to. I don't know what happened." "Out!" Linda barked, slamming her palm on the hood of the car. Martha opened her door, stepping out between them like a shield. "Linda, calm yourself. She's terrified. Don't make this worse." Linda's face twisted with rage and grief. Do you even know what she's done? Do you know who she might have hit out there? Martha's eyes narrowed. What do you mean by that? Linda's chest heaved. She looked toward the road behind them, then back at her daughter. I got a call. Someone saw a body lying in the ditch not far from here. They said it was a man. And they said he looked familiar. Caroline's knees buckled. She clung to the car for support. No. No, please, Mama, don't say it. Don't tell me. Linda's voice dropped, low and bitter. They said it looked like your father. The world seemed to freeze. The night air grew heavy, pressing down on them all. Caroline's scream tore through the silence, raw and broken. She dropped to her knees on the asphalt, her hands clutching her hair. No. Well, I didn't. I couldn't have. Tell me it's not true. James staggered back, his hand over his mouth. Martha felt her own knees weaken, but she forced herself to stand tall, to breathe, to hold steady. She turned to Linda, her voice steady but urgent. We don't know anything for certain yet. We must go back and see for ourselves before we jump to conclusions. Linda's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was hard. If it's him, Martha, if my husband is lying back there because of her reckless sin, then this family's curse runs deeper than anything we ever imagined. Caroline's sobs filled the night, echoing against the bridge walls. And then, in the distance, faint but growing louder, came the sound of sirens. Red and blue lights flickered against the trees, winding their way closer and closer. Caroline's head shot up, her face pale with terror. The police, they're coming for me. The wail of sirens cut through the night, closer with every second. Red and blue lights flashed across the trees, spilling over Caroline's tear-streaked face, over Linda's clenched jaw, and over Martha's calm but heavy gaze. Caroline scrambled to her feet, her hands trembling as she clutched Martha's arm. What do I do? They'll take me away. I'll go to jail, Mama. Please, I didn't mean to. Linda snapped, her grief hardening into fury. You may not have meant to, but actions have consequences, Caroline. If your father is lying in that ditch. Her voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. If he's gone, nothing will ever forgive this. Martha placed herself between mother and daughter, her voice firm. Stop. Both of you. We don't know what we'll find yet. Don't condemn her until we see the truth with our own eyes. The police cruiser pulled up, gravel crunching under the tires. Two officers stepped out, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. One was young, stiff-backed, his jaw tight with duty. The other, older, with weary eyes that suggested he'd seen too many nights like this. Evening, folks, the older one said, his voice steady. We got a report of a possible hit-and-run along this road. Car matching that description. He pointed his flashlight toward Caroline's dented vehicle. That your car, miss? Caroline's lips trembled. She couldn't speak. Her knees gave out again and she dropped to the ground, sobbing. Martha stepped forward, her chin lifted. Officers, she's shaken. Yes, it's her car. She believes she might have struck something or someone back there. We came to see if it was true. The younger officer narrowed his eyes. Might have. Either she did or she didn't. The older one raised a hand, silencing him. Let's go back to the scene and check before we draw conclusions. Linda clutched her chest, her voice desperate. Please, if there's a man lying out there, tell me. Tell me if it's my husband. The officers exchanged a glance. Ma'am, we'll find out, the older one assured. But you should prepare yourself. It may not be good. They moved as a group, the officers leading the way, their flashlights scanning the road and ditches as they backtracked. The night was heavy with dread. Each step felt like walking deeper into a nightmare. Caroline stumbled along, clinging to Martha's arm, whispering, please God, let it be nothing. Let it be a deer. Let it be anything but him. James trailed behind, silent, his face pale as chalk. For once, even he had no words. And then one of the flashlights stopped. A beam of light fixed on a dark shape lying in the grass at the side of the road. Over here! the younger officer shouted. Everyone rushed forward. Caroline covered her mouth with her hands, muffling a scream. Linda froze, her body trembling. Martha's chest tightened as her eyes fell on the figure. It was a man. He was sprawled on his side, motionless. His jacket torn. His face bloodied but still visible. Linda let out a wail so piercing it shattered the silence. Harold! Oh God, Harold! She collapsed to her knees beside the body, shaking him. Harold, wake up. Please, please don't leave me. Caroline shrieked, stumbling back, her body racked with sobs. I didn't see him. I didn't know, it was dark. I swear I didn't mean to. The older officer knelt, placing 2 fingers on Harold's neck. For a moment the world seemed to stop. Everyone held their breath. Then he looked up, his voice firm but grave. He's alive. Pulse is weak, but he's alive. Relief and chaos exploded all at once. Linda wept harder, clutching Harold's hand. Caroline dropped to the ground, sobbing into her palms. James exhaled, his shoulders sagging, while Martha closed her eyes, whispering, "Thank you, Lord." The younger officer grabbed his radio. "We need an ambulance at Miller Bridge. Male in his 60s, unconscious but breathing, possible hit and run. Send EMS immediately." Caroline's sobs turned to hysterical cries. "They'll arrest me. I'll go to prison." The older officer stood, his face stern. "Miss, you're coming with us tonight. We'll get your statement. But whether this ends in prison depends on what we learn. You did the right thing calling someone instead of hiding it. That may count for something." Linda's grief-stricken eyes shot up, blazing with fury at her daughter. Right thing. She nearly killed her own father. What kind of daughter are you? What kind of sin have you brought on this family? Caroline crumpled at her mother's words, curling into herself on the asphalt. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. Martha bent down beside her, stroking her hair softly, speaking with a voice that carried strength and compassion. Child, listen to me. Life doesn't end with one mistake. But how you face it, that's what defines you. You can't run from this. You must walk through it. Caroline looked up at her, eyes wide, desperate. But how, Martha? How do I walk through this when everyone hates me? Martha's gaze was firm, her voice low. You start by telling the truth. Just then, the wail of an ambulance grew louder in the distance. Red lights flickered across the horizon, rushing closer. But before the paramedics could arrive, Harold stirred. His head moved slightly. A groan escaped his lips. Linda gasped. Harold! Harold, it's me, Linda. Can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. And then, with a raspy breath, he spoke 4 words that froze everyone in place. It wasn't her fault. The sirens screamed louder, closing in. But the meaning of those words hung heavy in the night, raising more questions than answers. The ambulance screeched to a halt beside them, its red lights bathing the bridge in a ghostly glow. Paramedics rushed out, kneeling beside Harold, checking his pulse, lifting him onto a stretcher. But Martha's mind was fixed on those 4 words that had tumbled from his broken lips. It wasn't her fault. Caroline's sobs stopped, frozen mid-breath. Linda blinked, confused, her grief colliding with disbelief. What do you mean, Harold? What do you mean it wasn't her fault? Harold's head lolled weakly on the stretcher, his voice hoarse but urgent. I stepped into the road, on purpose. The air grew still. Even the paramedics paused, glancing at each other in disbelief. Linda grabbed his hand, tears spilling down her face. On purpose. Harold, know why? Harold's eyes, glassy with pain, turned toward her. I saw James's car. Saw him with Caroline. My own daughter. His voice cracked. The shame, the anger, it was too much. I walked out. Didn't care if a car hit me or not. A wave of gasps rippled through the group. Caroline covered her mouth, trembling. James turned pale, his legs almost giving way. Linda's face twisted with grief and rage. You mean This wasn't just an accident. You tried to end your life. Harold gave the faintest nod, a tear slipping down his cheek. I thought maybe it would punish them all. But I was wrong. His eyes shifted weakly toward Caroline. She didn't see me. It wasn't her fault. Caroline collapsed to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Daddy, no. Don't say that. Please don't leave me. I was stupid, I was reckless, but I love you. I swear I do. Linda's body shook as she clung to the stretcher. Harold, you're all I have. Don't you dare leave me now. Not like this. The paramedics lifted Harold into the ambulance, strapping him in. One of them turned to the officers. We'll take him to County General. He's critical but stable. You might want to get statements fast in case. He cut himself off, leaving the weight of his words hanging. The older officer turned to Caroline. His voice, though stern, was softer now. Looks like this case isn't what it first seemed. You'll still need to come with us, miss. But it may be more complicated than a hit and run. Caroline nodded weakly, still crying. She clung to Martha's hand like a child, whispering, Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. Martha squeezed her hand gently. I won't, child. I'm here. James, silent all this time, finally spoke, his voice low, broken. This is all my fault. If I hadn't strayed, none of this would have happened. Martha, I don't deserve your forgiveness. And Caroline, I don't deserve even your anger. I deserve nothing. Martha turned her gaze on him, her face lined with exhaustion but also with a strange, unshakable strength. You're right, James. You don't deserve forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't something people earn. It's something given, freely, even when it feels impossible. She took a long breath. But I'm not ready to give it yet. Not tonight. Her words were calm, but they cut sharper than any blade. James lowered his head, ashamed. Linda stepped forward then, her voice ragged but strong. Martha, after all this, after what my daughter did to you, why are you standing by her side? Martha looked at Caroline, then at Linda, her eyes soft but steady. Because bitterness is a poison that kills the one who drinks it. I've lived too long to let it consume me. Caroline may have been foolish, but she's still a soul in pain. And when someone is drowning, you don't ask how they got there before you reach in and pull them out. Her words hung in the air, heavy with truth. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and with a blare of sirens, Harold was whisked away into the night. The officers escorted Caroline to their cruiser, though they allowed Martha to ride with her. Linda stayed behind, watching them leave, her face etched with heartbreak and fury. Back in the cruiser, Caroline leaned against Martha's shoulder, sobbing quietly. I ruined everything. My family. Worse, my father. I don't deserve to live. Martha stroked her hair gently, whispering like a grandmother soothing a child. Hush now. Deserving has nothing to do with it. None of us live because we deserve it. We live because we're given another chance. And when we're given a chance, we have to use it wisely. The police car rolled down the empty road, the flashing lights painting the night red and blue. And as Martha stared out into the darkness, she knew this night would never be forgotten. It had begun with betrayal, spiraled into chaos, and nearly ended in death. But somewhere in the wreckage, a spark of grace had flickered, a chance for truth, for healing, for redemption. Whether any of them would grasp it, only time would tell.